This is the first in a series of interviews throughout the nation between National Defense Counsel and members of Berkeley Med's claim management team.
Hello, I'm Rick Farlow with Berkeley Med. We're here to visit with you today about a new strategy that the plaintiffs are using in litigation called the Reptile Strategy. I'm going to be visiting with Mr. John Hall, National Defense Counsel today, and what I'd like to do is take this opportunity to tell you a little bit about Mr. Hall. In Mr. Hall's career, he's tried over 100 cases to verdict. Specifically, since 1999, Mr. Hall has tried over 70 cases, meaning he's averaged 5.4 trials a year for the past 10 years, all of a catastrophic nature. So what we'd like to do is now visit with Mr. Hall about the Reptile Strategy and have him tell us about the tactics he's using to combat this strategy. So John, tell me about this new Reptile Strategy that you're starting to see in the courtroom across the country.
Well, Rick, it's interesting. It's a couple of very successful plaintiffs' lawyers in the past who have had a lot of success in the courtroom, and now they've figured out they can sell their strategies and materials to other plaintiffs' lawyers. And it is a nationwide advertising program in which they're taking a particular strategy that really brings juries back to the basics, brings them back to wanting to protect themselves and their families against the big corporate world. And that's the view that the plaintiffs are putting out, so that if you don't fight that, the jurors really already start out being antagonistic against you at the time you start the trial.
Based on our research, what I have found, and I wanted to visit with you about that today for our clients, it's my understanding that a gentleman wrote the book, The Reptile Strategy, and then he also has a consultant that travels with him, and they go around and do these seminars to solicit additional plaintiff attorneys for this opportunity. Is that correct?
Yeah, actually two plaintiffs' attorneys, Ball and Keenan. Keenan's from Atlanta, I think Ball's up from the Northeast, who had very successful careers, been very good trial lawyers themselves, wrote this book, and they have seen it as an opportunity. The plaintiff's bar is far more connected than the defense bar. They share briefs, they share information about cases. Simply because of their nature, they see themselves because of where their particular jurisdictions are, they're less competitive with each other. So the plaintiff's bar is already sharing this information, and when they see a strategy that works, they tend to share it. And that's what they're doing, Keenan and Ball is doing with the Reptile. This is big time business. If you go out and just like Stephen Covey's 7 Habits, there's seminars being done weekly, they're being advertised on the internet. Go look at you will be shocked if you go to Google, look at the reptile theory and how this is being marketed. I don't think any single one plaintiff strategy has ever been marketed on a nationwide basis as frequently and as continuously as this one is being done right now.
So why is it called the Reptile Strategy anyway?
I think only plaintiff attorneys would come up with that name, but basically what it means is let's do away with thought, reason, and otherwise, and let's just do with emotional response to danger. Let's create a situation in which the facts of the lawsuit create a danger that threaten your nest. If you're, imagine a reptile protecting her nest, you're have an emotional reaction to something affecting your nest, and that you respond emotionally to it without thought, but in a very deliberate, straightforward, and violent way, i.e. large aberration verdicts.
So these seem like really simple concepts when you think about it. Why is it so important?
They are simple concepts, but it's simple concepts in a complex situation. Very few people try these catastrophic cases in terms of frequency, ability to come along and have an experience with them. And so what the plaintiffs do is they take a very simple concept, and that is for the jurors to protect themselves, protect their families, have a simple set of rules out there that if somebody violates, then they ought to have to be responsible to you and your family for violating the rules. They then set up a corporate world that has policies, procedures, guidelines. They set those policies, procedures, guidelines up as the simple rules. And that when those get violated, immediately the corporation ought to be punished. And that's what they really mean by reptile. They're talking about coming back and protecting their nest. So it is simple, but it is an aggressive strategy that takes away the theories of reasonableness, responsibleness, why a corporation or an individual, a doctor, a nurse, or a physician should be responsible. It takes those things away, and that if you just break a rule, which is usually a very aspirational, generic rule that nobody can comply with, if you break that rule, then you violated the law, and therefore you should be punished. If you don't face those strategies, if you don't challenge them straight up front, you can really lose control of a jury by the time you get into your case to the point they're already glazed over and not listening to you.
John, are you starting to see this tactic used more in the medical malpractice arena?
Yes, there's actually a brochure I got from my office last week that's been sent around to lawyers around the country. It's on their websites saying that the reptile strategy, they're teaching a course in Florida on the reptile strategy being used in med mal cases. They also have dates scheduled in Dallas, in Tucson, across the country, in which they're going out and preaching this to plaintiffs' lawyers as a way. And you have to understand, plaintiffs' lawyers likewise don't try cases frequently, so they're looking for a way to present their case. So they're really just eating this up. And so I think you're going to see it more and more in medical and every other kind of case.
Have you in your practice personally encountered it, or has your firm personally encountered it in medical malpractice cases?
We have. I tried a case last year in which the plaintiff's lawyer from the start, right when we started voir dire, started saying that the standard of care is really medical safety rules. In other words, it's not what a reasonable physician would do under same or similar circumstances. It's just a rule, and if you violate that rule, then they're entitled to monetary damages. And he started conditioning the juries in voir dire on that. He had poster boards blown up that showed an equated state safety rule. We constantly fought that in front of the jury. We would indicate, no, that's not the correct standard. We'd raise objections to it. We would try to get the jury back to what the law is. And in fact, to the point that ultimately, as the trial progressed, Rick, the judge came back and instructed the plaintiff in closing argument he couldn't say medical safety rule. He had to call it the standard of care, which is what the law was.
So I understand that you have a national practice in defending clients across the country in these medical malpractice cases, and actually catastrophic type medical malpractice cases. Is that correct?
Yeah, we tend to be primarily in the Southeast, but we've been as far as New Jersey and as far west as California. We routinely handle cases in about 26 states. I think I've tried cases in about 16 states.
So based on what you're seeing across the country, are you seeing this as a nationwide problem now with this new strategy, or is it confined to the East Coast or a certain part of the country?
No, this is a marketed nationwide strategy that is across the country. Any person, you go to any hospital administrator that you work with, you go tell them to Google for a local reptile strategy, and they'll be able to go into Google and they'll see immediately that there's a training session in their area on reptiles, or at least in their general area.
John, thank you for your time visiting with us today about this new reptile strategy. We really appreciate it, and we look forward to working with you in the future.
Well, it's a pleasure. Appreciate Berkeley Med coming to our national office, and look forward to working with you guys to defeat these reptiles in the future.
All right.